So we're at the National Conference for Media Reform right now. Can you define media reform?
I think it responds to a problem, and we have to always kind of think of it from that perspective. So, what's the problem? By and large, if you ask most people how they feel about media, do they feel like it's accurate? Do they feel like it represents their lived experiences? Do most people feel like their perspectives, their opinions are reflected in the media? Most people would say no, that's a problem. And I think that's especially true for communities of color, poor communities, where the only times we see ourselves in the media are when something's gone bad. Media should play a purpose in our society to help to increase democracy, to increase like civic participation, that it should be a tool that informs people so that we can make the best educated guess as a society for the major decisions that we need to make as a society. The sector that I'm kind of a part of is a little bit different. It's the media justice sector, and it's very much like media reform, but we also believe and understand that like it's not enough to just democratize media. It's also important to change the process in terms of how laws are made, because the problem that we're dealing with nowadays with a media that's super consolidated, a media that doesn't really reflect our society, is a direct result of like laws that were passed.
So you mentioned, marginalized communities. Maybe you said like people of color and poor people only see ourselves in the media when there's something going wrong. Can you elaborate on that? Why do we need media reform and why do we need media justice?
I came up as a community organizer, and the role of a community organizer is to build leadership in communities, to build power, because ultimately power is what it's going to take to change the fact that we have really low high school graduation rates among communities of color. It's going to take power to change the fact that we have over 2 million people incarcerated in the United States, of which 60% are people of color. There's kind of 3 areas of power that we need to be building and influencing. The first is around decision makers, so the people who have the power to give you what you want. You have to build power to influence them. You also have to build power to be able to set the agenda, so the priorities around the issues that we care about, we need to have the power to set that agenda. And then lastly, we need to have the power to shape public meaning, and that's done through the media. And the media plays a direct role in shaping our public perceptions, our public opinions. And if we can shape media and if we can shape public opinions, we can shape policy.
So as an individual and also as a coordinator for Center for Media Justice and Magnet, how are you making change in the media and how are you reforming media?
Well, primarily this campaign that we're working on, the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, it's been our signature campaign for the last year. What we're trying to do is get the Federal Communications Commission to set some affordable rates for phone calls from prison. Right now, a 15-minute phone call can cost you anywhere around $15, $17. When you think about the consequences of creating that disconnection among families and prisoners, there's some major consequences that affect a multitude of different areas in our lives. If it affects education, because a lot of the children of prisoners, and there are over 2.7 million of them, do worse in school because they don't have a tight connection with their parents. The other thing that we're working on is the community radio work that we're doing is super important, because 1,000 new radio licenses could potentially be given out in the next year or so. If we're successful in getting those 1,000 radio stations in the hands of organizations like yourselves, organizations that truly believe that we need to use media as a tool to change society, it's amazing what we could accomplish if we had 1,000 new radio stations that all kind of used our language, talked like us, and represented the values that we care about, and represented the stories and the communities that we come from.
So these are public, radio licenses for public radio?
Yeah, they're non-commercial radio licenses. So they're meant to be neighborhood-based, they're meant to be non-commercial, they're meant to be held by nonprofits. So that's why it's super critical that we get organizations that represent communities of color, that represent rural communities, that jump on the opportunity to actually own a piece of our own airwaves. I love the work y'all are doing. Generation Justice is dope, so thank you.